Good day, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for your patience for those who joined us a little bit early. My name is Cynthia Loren. For those of you whom I've not yet had the pleasure of meeting, I am co-founder and director at ACGC. Thank you so much for joining us for this, our final webinar of 2023 with Sterling Miller. Sterling is definitely no stranger to many of us here at ACGC, and for those who work in the in-house legal world or who operate in the in-house legal space. Sterling's going to be sharing with us 10 habits of highly successful in-house counsel. And I think it's the perfect prelude to a productive 2024, which is why we've invited him to speak on this, our final masterclass. Before I hand over to Sterling, I just want to extend an invitation to those of you who are attending today's session, who are passionate, knowledgeable, interested in the field of process improvement and change management. We're going to be organizing a session, or actually we're in the process of organizing a session in partnership with the Association of Corporate Counsel, the ACC, in January, and we're looking for speakers. So if process improvement and change management is an area that you are interested in and would like to speak on, please do speak to myself or Olademeji Balogun, our community manager, who's online as well, after this session. We're looking for a diverse range of voices to enrich our discussion. So we would love to hear from you. We have a really exciting calendar for 2024. I hope you've been able to participate throughout the year in the webinars and in-person sessions that ACGC has organized in 2023. Things are going to get even more exciting and interesting in the year ahead. We will be releasing our 2024 calendar shortly so that you can mark your dates. We'll have our annual conference in Ghana in September, so please do plan ahead for that. Sterling has also very kindly committed to running some sessions.
Morning, wherever you may be. This is a really fun topic for me, so I'm glad Cynthia and team selected it. I will tell you that I have more than 10 habits that I'm going to talk about because I couldn't stop. I wrote a blog called 10 Habits of Highly Successful In-House Lawyers a while back, and I've updated it over time, and I keep finding things that I think are of interest. So we're going to talk about those today. So just a little bit about me. If you weren't here last time, we all got together. So I've been a lawyer for over 30 years. Hard to believe. I've spent most of my time in-house, almost 25 years. I was with American Airlines, Sabre Corporation, Travelocity, and Marketo. Those last three, I was the general counsel for. I've written 5 books. I have a 6th one on the way on productivity. The irony being at finding time to write it, but it will be out sometime in 24. I'm excited about that. If you have heard of me, it's probably because of the blog, 10 Things You Need to Know as In-House Counsel. And you'll get a copy of this presentation. All the hyperlinks that you see will be live. But if you haven't subscribed to the blog, it's free. I just posted last Thursday on how to create standard operating procedures and checklists, which sounds like that might work into your January topic for the next presentation. And I'm one of the few in-house lawyers, at least currently, I think this is a growing trend, who has gone from the in-house world back to a law firm, and I'm now the CEO and senior counsel. I do legal work as well as run the day-to-day operations of the firm. And if anyone's interested in that, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about the firm or why I made that choice. These are some of the books that I've written. These are all available, I believe, in ebook. Certainly the American Bar Association ones are. If you see a book and you really want one, you can't figure out a way to get it, just email me. I'm happy to find a way to get it to wherever you may be. With that, let's transition then into our topic for today. So a few years ago, I was cleaning out a bunch of books, which I'm sure lots of people do once a year, and I came across my old copy of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And that book came out in the late 80s. I think I got my copy sometime in the mid 90s. And it was such a great book. And it was really influential in me and my career. And as I looked through it, I thought, wow, there's so much here that is still relevant today. So it's one of those timeless books, like Making Friends and Influencing People, that just seems to go on and on and on with a lot of fundamental truths. So if you have never read 7 Habits, I highly encourage you to do that. And it got me thinking about my career as an in-house lawyer and the things that I was doing. And I realized that I had a lot of habits, proclivities, whatever you want to call them, that I tended to do day in and day out, or over the course of a day. And I'd met other people who had the same kind of routines, different, maybe they did things differently, but they had a routine. We'll talk about that. And so I decided, well, I'm going to write down my 10 habits of what I think it takes to be a successful in-house lawyer. And that's what we're going to walk through here this morning. If you have a question, you can put it into the chat. We'll get to those at the end. If you want to interrupt me, ask me a question while I'm speaking, that's absolutely fine. You just have to unmute and ask. I'm happy to take those in real time, or again, we can wait until the end. So what are the habits of highly successful in-house lawyers? Number one, carry a notebook and write things down. And if you don't have a preference, I prefer the Mead Cambridge Limited Action Planner item number. Well, you can see it there. It is a great notebook if you want to get into the habit of taking notes. And why projects, just your thoughts, getting all of that down on paper and keeping that in a way that you can find it if you need it is really, I think, just really important to being successful. When you write things down by hand, so I know people who type notes into their computer. I know people who type notes into an iPad, some even into their smartphone. That's okay. If that's what works for you, great. But what I found is if I write it by hand, it forces several things. One, you have to get really good at abbreviating your writing, right? Because you're not writing out a transcript. You're not recording the meeting to go back and watch it later, which you probably aren't going to do anyway. So having my own style of shorthand helps me write things down and tightens up my writing, because I only focus on the things that really matter. And I have to listen harder if I'm writing things down by hand than if I'm just sitting back and going, well, it'll get recorded or someone else is going to take the notes and I'll have those. So I have found that to be really important. And lastly, you retain more if you write things down by hand versus typing them out or just listening. I love the Mead Action Planner. I'll show you mine. This is mine. They've changed the front, so it's not the green anymore, but it's just tons of notes and emails that I printed out and stuck in, and contracts and whatever. And I have dozens and dozens and dozens of these. And every once in a while I go back. They're all in chronological order. I can find things if I need them. But the Mead Planner really lends itself because it has bullets and lists and lines. It's all kinds of great stuff. If you really want to have something electronic, and that I think that is great, there is the Remarkable tablet, which allows you to write on a tablet screen, and it will save your notes for you. And so you get kind of the benefit of writing it down, but also the benefit of the technology. So if that's something you're interested in, I find paper inexpensive and highly effective. So that's what I stick with. And it's not just me. There was a study that was published in Scientific American a few years back that kind of underscored something that I had just learned intuitively, and that is, if you use longhand, you're going to remember more and you're going to have a deeper understanding of whatever the material is, either as a student, as a lawyer, or whatever the case may be. So number one is getting that notebook and keeping it with you and writing things down. Number two, and I talked about this right at the very beginning, is having that routine to start your day, that habit of doing things or certain things in the same way every day, day in and day out. is incredibly effective. And it's effective because of the things that you're seeing here on the slide. First, a routine makes it easier to manage your time. If you ever find yourself just kind of scattered over what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, having a routine about how you're going to spend your day can make a huge difference. Routines can reduce what they call decision fatigue, meaning your brain just gets tired of making so many decisions every day. If you have a routine and things just go naturally in a certain way, that's gonna require you not really to make a decision. You just know what's going to come next. Routines make things consistent and reliable, so you know the same thing is going to happen at the same time roughly every day. Can reduce stress. If you have goals and you set routines to help you accomplish those goals, again, all those little steps that you take along the way toward the end goal can be captured in a routine, in a checklist, in something that you know you're doing the same way day out and day in. And then lastly, improved focus and productivity, because again, it allows you to remove distractions. It allows you to get things done faster and quicker. So I'm a huge believer in routines. And I think if you probably already have some of these, you just don't necessarily realize it. But if you sat down and thought about it, what do you do the first thing you come in and turn on your computer, or you go into the office, or what do you do when you first go into a meeting? All of those things and more are ripe for what I would call a routine. Another habit of successful in-house lawyers is they are always looking to enhance or expand their skill set. They're never satisfied with what I have learned everything I need to know up to today. I do not need to learn anymore. Therefore, I am finished. I have yet to come across anyone who thinks that way. Really, most people are falling into this bucket, which is how can I enhance and expand my skill set? So number one, whatever your specialty is, and I know a lot of you may be in small legal departments, so you cover a lot of different things. That's great. If you're a member of a larger legal department, you may be in the contract section, you may be in the litigation section, employment law, whatever it is. First, just stay on top of your specialty, get better at your specialty. If you have other skills, like maybe you're a litigator, but you can draft contracts, which was kind of my superpower when I first went in-house. I could do both. That makes me more valuable. And employees who can do more than one thing are not only more valuable to the legal department, you're more valuable to the company. So looking for adjacencies, things like I could learn that, I could learn how to do that. That would be a real good skill to develop, especially if you aspire to be a general counsel and maybe you're early in your career. The more things that you have done, the more experiences you have had, the different types of law you are familiar with, the more rounded that makes you, and the better that makes you as a candidate for general counsel. And again, if you're in a small legal department or solo legal department, the more skills you have, the better for obvious reasons. When I was head of litigation in my first in-house position, I told my team we were going to be the garbage men of the legal department. And if someone didn't want something, we were going to take it, we were going to learn it, and we were going to expand all the things that we did. So litigation became litigation regulatory. We took on immigration, contests and sweepstakes, government affairs, bankruptcy. There's probably a couple of others in there, but that was all great training. And it also reinforced, certainly in myself, but I think on the members of my team, that short of maybe complicated tax law, you can learn new areas of the law pretty easily. You will not be an expert, but you can buy a book, you can take a CLE course, you can get a lot of the basics down pretty quickly, and then start to get more comfortable with growing those skills. So get out of your comfort zone. If you see something that needs to be done in the legal department and no one's doing it, raise your hand, volunteer, own that. That could be on the administrative side, that could be on a legal area. It doesn't really matter, but it's a way of not only you gaining more skills, but to let others understand that here's someone with the potential to do more than just one thing, and that makes you incredibly valuable. So looking to expand your skill set. successful in-house lawyers are definitely practical. It is a skill that I know a lot of in-house lawyers struggled with, especially if they came from a big law firm. It's not easy to be practical when you are trained for years and years and years to kind of be the opposite of practical, meaning turning over every rock, chasing down every possibility, writing in a very complicated way, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. So what I mean by this is when you're in-house, and a lot of you, if you've been doing this job long enough, some of these are going to ring 100% true right now. You have to be practical with your advice. You have to give the business advice that actually works in the real world. And that requires that you have an understanding of the business and how it operates and what's going on in the marketplace and the regulatory space. And you take all of that information and you synthesize it. And when you give advice, yes, maybe one of your customers breached the contract. And typically you may say, we need to sue this company. But if they're your biggest customer, maybe they're responsible for half of your revenue, you're probably not in a wise position if your first response to them and what you think is a breach is just to file a lawsuit. You actually, you're going to want to have a conversation. You're going to want to try to resolve it, but you don't know that unless you're thinking practically and you understand what's going on at the company. Similarly, risk is another area that lawyers in-house and outside have a hard time with, because we're naturally trained. We naturally are, and we are trained to be risk averse. And I think in the ideal legal world, you would reduce risk to zero, meaning nothing bad could ever happen based on my advice or based on what I'm writing or what we're putting together. And if you've been doing this long enough, that is impossible. You cannot get to zero risk. And in fact, you don't want to get to zero risk. Companies that don't take risks rarely succeed. There are lots of reasons why this may be risky, but the payoff is going to be good. So as an in-house lawyer and being practical, understand what the company's risk profile is on in general or any specific type of project or contract or whatever, and match up with that. Don't for what the company wants to do. Of course, always making sure that the right people at the right level are making the decisions about risk. Being practical with your time. Your time is incredibly valuable. And sometimes we don't think about 30 minutes of my day is worth a lot to the law firm and to the clients. Whereas to me, 30 minutes, yeah, I could probably, go watch a television show for 30 minutes. But in the work world, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, even 10 minutes is incredibly valuable. So what are you doing with those minutes? Are you going to meetings that you don't need to attend? Rethink that. What meetings can you get out of? What meetings are really ripe for someone from the legal department? You can say no, not all the time, but you can say no to meetings. And that is a really great way of freeing up your time. And even when you have little minutes, and I wrote about this last year, I called it the power of little things, just tiny 4 or 5 minute increments or 10-minute increments. When I write books and blogs, I write a lot just in 5 minutes, and then I put it down and I go work on whatever it is I have to work on. So you can decide what you want to do with those little increments of time. You can crush candy on your phone, or make the birds even more angry, or you can say, you know what, I'm going to go through 4 invoices in the next 10 minutes and get those off my desk. It's all up to you. It's all about being practical in how you use your time. Learning how to delegate, learning when good enough is good enough. Not every project requires A+ work, even though we are trained that is what we should be doing. As you become more and more experienced as an in-house lawyer, you'll realize there are some contracts that they're just not worth a lot of time. You look for 2 or 3 things. If those are there, you just go, good, sign it. Whereas there are other contracts where it's going to take days and days and days of your time, but you have to understand which ones those are, and you can't spend that amount of time on a contract that doesn't deserve it. And what I used to tell my team is, hey, every time we can play checkers, let's play checkers. Let's keep it simple. We need to play chess, we will. Every once in a while, we're negotiating, we're going to have to play poker. Learn how to play those and learn when those are appropriate. Another habit of being successful in-house is don't write like a lawyer, which may sound incredibly bizarre, but I'm telling you from experience, this is 100% true. You need to learn to write like a business person. Why? Because your audience, 99% of the time, are business people. They do not understand legal issues. They do not care about legal issues. They do not want things like lawyers typically write for partners at a law firm or for the court. All of that is incredibly unwelcomed by the business. So you have to adopt a mindset where I am a business person who has a law degree. That is what I'm bringing to the company every day, versus we're the legal team. We're over here. We're special. We're just going to write legal stuff and send it out to the business. And it's up to them to figure out how to read it and how to understand it. Don't do that. When you are writing, consider the business context. Again, the last section being practical. What's going on in the real world? How do I adapt the context of the business into what I'm writing in my email or memo or PowerPoint, whatever the case may be? Am I prioritizing conveying information, which is really what the business wants, or am I getting into the weeds on legal details? Again, they don't care about the legal details. I know you do. I do. The general counsel may. If you're writing between lawyers or with law firms, that's a different style of writing than when you're writing to the business. And lastly, it's okay to point out the risk. You should do that, all the different risks and options. But the important thing is to really write about the solution. Here is the proposal. Here's one way to solve this. If all you're doing is laying out the problems and handing that over to the business, you are adding about 20% of the value that you could add to the business. The real value is your ability to understand what the risks are, what the context is, and give advice that makes sense in the real world. And that's what I mean by writing like a business person. What business people do want from you, they want the answer up front. Don't make them wade through 20 pages of an email to get to the answer, or the answer is in bits and pieces in different sections and they have to pull out which bits and pieces answer their questions. Just start with, here was the assignment, here was the question, here's the short answer, then go into the analysis. Because for the most part, no business person is going to read a 20-page memo. And if they can't find the answer, they're either going to ignore it or they're going to do something that you don't want them to do. So write in a way that is conducive to what they need, keeping it simple. Again, legal jargon, legal analysis, footnotes, case citations, none of that matters. They do not want to see that, and you should not put that in things that you are writing to the business. Again, between lawyers, outside lawyers, if you're writing for the court or a regulatory agency, different story. But when you're writing to the business, it's all about keeping it simple. It's about using charts and graphs and numbers, because that's how the business people communicate. And we have to tap into the things that they do, the way that they communicate with each other, and making sure that we're lining up with that level of communication. Don't deliver legal advice like an edict. Legal does not run the business, much as we think we can, and we probably could. The business runs the business, and we are there to give them advice. We are there to help them solve problems. And as long as the right person is making the decision, even if it's not the decision that the legal department would take, that's okay, unless it's criminal or someone's going to get hurt or it would cause you to violate your ethical obligations. Then the business gets to decide what they're going to do with the risk and what they're going to do with your advice and how they're going to solve the problem. And you have to learn to live with that and not fight that, because that is their prerogative as the operators of the business. Another habit, it took me a while to learn this because I was kind of the person who would just let email dictate my day, and I would just keep responding to the newest email, which meant I never really got anything done. And then one day I decided I was going to get really hardcore about prioritizing what's really important. Where am I going to spend most of my time? Not all my time, because I realize that there are things that aren't necessarily super important or urgent, but still have to get done, because if they don't get done, other things happen that you don't want to have happen. So what I have used for years is what's called an Eisenhower matrix. It's a 2x2. This is an example. And the things in the upper right quadrant are urgent and important. Those are the things that you generally want to focus your time on. Depending on where you are in the world, how the economy is going, a lot of in-house lawyers that I speak to, I know budgets are tightening, and they're starting to hear something that I heard a lot when I was in-house is you're going to have to do more with less. Well, how do you do that? How could you possibly do more with less resources or less time? Because there's only so many hands in the legal department, and maybe only be you. And there's only so much that you can do. And the way you solve that is you start to be incredibly diligent about prioritizing and go, these are the things I'm going to focus on today. And then if I have time for the other stuff, I will get to it. Sometimes you have to ask the business for its priorities, make sure that your priorities are matching those and they know what you're going to be working on. And they know these are the things we can't get to. You need to tell them that. They don't want to hear it because they want you to say, oh, we'll get to everything, but they do need to hear it. Like, look, if our budget is cut, if I only have 2 people, you made me fire my 3rd person, we have to change what we're going to be able to do. And they should, at the end of the day, understand that, because businesses do that all the time. They make priorities. They have to make use of the resources they have in the best way possible. And you can do that as well. But be relentless about how you prioritize the work that comes into the legal department. Soft skills. You may not think as a lawyer that soft skills matter, but the really successful in-house lawyers have mastered most, if not all of these. And this is not an exhaustive list of soft skills. Again, all these links will be live and you can click through and learn more about these. But this all started for me when I realized, kind of the light bulb went off, is the business doesn't really know how good of a lawyer you are, or maybe how bad of a lawyer you are. They have no basis for really understanding your legal analysis and your legal thought process. They may understand if it's practical or not, but how you got to that analysis, how you got to that answer, they're just not equipped to do it. But what they can measure you on are what I call the soft skills. Are you a good listener? Do you think critically about problems? Are you approachable? Are you someone that they want to go talk with? Do you have emotional intelligence? Are you self-aware? We all have faults. Are you aware of your own faults, or do you view yourself as someone who doesn't have any? Most people are pretty self-aware. How do you go about solving problems? What do you look for? How creative are you? Again, non-legal skills, though they touch on legal work, but they are things that the business will become very, very familiar with. Are you curious? Are you proactive? That's a really important one. How do you write? We talked about that. How do you communicate with the business? Are you talking down to them because you're in the legal department, or are you trying to be a partner and really make it something where you are truly both engaged and trying to solve whatever the issue is? Do you work well under pressure? Again, I know most in-house lawyers deal with a lot of pressure just because of limited resources, way too much work, and sometimes, those really incredibly hard problems that, matter if you do not have if you're not successful in solving them. Are you decisive? Are you flexible, right? Like, okay, yeah, this won't work, but how about we try this? You have other solutions. And you're responsible, right? If you say you're going to do something, you deliver on what you've told them you will do. And then last one, this is really important. Gratitude. Unless you're just so miserably unhappy in your job, and if you are, you should leave, because that's a terrible way to go through day to day, month to month, year over year. But even when days were hard, being an in-house lawyer, I still always developed a sense of gratitude for the people that I worked with. I was incredibly grateful for my teammates, people that would help me, the people who worked for me when I became the boss. I was grateful for the job, because I did enjoy the job that I was doing, and that someone employed me to do that and paid me money. I thought that was great. And there's lots of other things. I think if you really think about it, even in the context of the business environment, you can show gratitude. And that is a great soft skill because it comes through, especially if it's truly authentic. People really understand that, and they really pick up on that. And that brings me to what I consider the most important soft skill, and that is a positive attitude. Yes, there are days when you go into the office and it's really hard and say, all right, this is a challenge. I'm up for this challenge. I'm going to dig in and we're going to solve it. I'm going to ask people to help me if I need it. Or are you trying to avoid it? Are you complaining that, I always get all the hard assignments, or, this is impossible. No one can ever solve this problem. How you approach your day, what self you bring to the office matters. And for most of my career, most days, not perfect, I tend to be very positive, and I want to bring that positivity to the office, to my team, to the people that I work with, and certainly to my business colleagues. And again, you can decide how you respond. So really successful in-house lawyers have mastered most, if not all of these, and especially that last one. People want to be around them because they're positive and they know they're going to have a really good chance at solving whatever the issue is before them. Successful in-house lawyers take risk. They understand risk and they decide they're not afraid to take chances because risk, and this is something I think a lot of lawyers, certainly myself as a younger in-house lawyer, didn't really focus on. And that's not all risk is negative. I alluded to this a few minutes ago that companies take risk because the payoff. You may want to do a merger with another company. You know that it's risky, that the competition authorities may say no. And you can say, well, there's a chance they're going to say no, so let's don't even do it. Or you could say there's a chance they'll say yes, especially if we can present the benefits of the merger in a certain way. If we get that merger, we're going to add a gajillion dollars of incremental revenue to the company. Let's take the risk. That is an example of a positive risk. There are, of course, risks that are so bad and awful, like, we could just not pay our taxes and see if they catch us. Highly illegal. Would never recommend anyone do that, but that's an example of a negative risk. But at the end of the day, as in-house lawyers, as an organization that is there to help and advise the business, do not impose your risk tolerance over that out of the business. And one of the things I experienced as general counsel, and I showed up new to 3 different companies, right, as a general counsel. And one of the first things I would do is go talk to the sales team, the head of sales, the contract people, and I would ask them about their experience working with the legal department and how much of the legal department's view of risk drives the contracts and the contracts process versus the business's view. And sometimes, it was always mixed, right? Sometimes, yeah, the business does it. Sometimes, well, the lawyers won't let us sign anything that doesn't have a cap on liability. We just can't sign it. And when I would come across situations like that, I'd have to go back to my team and go, guys, we do not get to decide that. If the business wants to take the risk of no cap on liability, our job is to explain what that means, lay out those things. And if the right person, maybe that's a CEO decision, says, you know what, this contract is so important to the survival of the business, we need to sign it, even if it doesn't have all the terms we want, then fall in line and let's do the best that we can. If you can find other things in the contract that can reduce the risk, if we can insure it, whatever the case is, let's find as best of a solution as we can. But legal doesn't run the business. And that was an interesting lesson for a lot of people who worked for me, because I always said, let the business make the decisions and we're there to advise. So as you get out of your comfort zone, that's taking a risk. If you're trying out new technology, I'm going to talk about that in a second, that's taking a risk. If you just start off the year, and it sounds like you have a really interesting program that Cynthia mentioned in January about processing our processes and how you improve those, start the year fresh. Think about all the things that the legal department does, or even just yourself, and how you do them, and is that still the most efficient and most effective way to do things? Just because it worked 5 years ago or 10 years ago doesn't mean it's the best way to do things now. And that, is it risky to take a change? Yes. But could it pay off? Definitely. So understand ways to take risk. One of the things that I learned was a little bit of game theory. Is if I do something, what is the most likely reaction of all the other players on the board or in the marketplace or whatever the case may be? And then as I think through their reactions, what is my response to those reactions? And you can keep playing that out several levels. But even if you just do an initial kind of 2 or 3, if I do this, they do that, what do I do? That makes you don't fall for false precision. And what I mean by that is I would spend a lot of time getting questions, especially when I was in charge of litigation. Sterling, what are the odds of us winning this motion or winning this case? And like all lawyers, my preferred percentage was 50-50 because that gave me total wiggle room. But obviously, unless I truly thought that, I was going to have to come up with something different. And I might say 65%, 70%, 40%, whatever the case is. But that's just a guess. It's an educated guess. Could it be 38% versus 40 or 67% versus 65? Yes. So as you come up with your estimates of risk, understand that those are only guesses, and how the real world is going to turn out is kind of a who knows. And you need to also make that clear to the business, like, this is our best guess based on what we know. And if any of these things change or something new comes into the scene, that could completely disrupt what we're laying out here for you. Or if you're in court, if you draw a judge that has a point of view that they want to make sure they put into every case, doesn't matter how good your legal arguments are, that judge is going to find a way to get to the decision that they want to get to. That's something you can't control. So understanding those things, understanding risk, and explaining that to the business is a habit of highly successful in-house lawyers. Embrace technology. So we talked about this again just a few slides ago. What do I mean by that? Well, lawyers in general are resistant to new technology, and I've seen this over and over and over again. When I was the young kid, which I'm not any longer, when I was at a law firm, hey, Sterling, can you come down here and show me how to do this, how to research on Lexis, how to download a file onto a floppy disk and then get it printed out. I mean, that's how old I am. And even now, as I'm the older person in the office, or even when I was my last in-house counsel job, new technology, I try to stay abreast of it, but it's hard to do it all. And sometimes you go, man, I don't understand this. Is there someone here who has spent a lot of time with that? It's usually the younger lawyers. But in general, lawyers are resistant. And I'm telling you, if you want to be successful in-house, don't be, because technology is your friend. It can save you time. It can save, apparently, typo there. It can make you more productive, which is really for me, the biggest value in technology is how much more productive it can make you if you are comfortable with it and if you are using it correctly. So, basic research tools. I'm a big fan of Practical Law. I know it's expensive, but if you can get access to it, it's a tremendous time saver. It's full of templates and explanations and checklists and toolkits, all aimed at in-house lawyers and all written by lawyers and professionals at the highest levels of the industry. But even if you don't have Practical Law, Lexis has Practical Guidance. There's Bloomberg. I'm sure there may be some other tools that are more specific to Africa. You can find things like Lexology.com, which is every day all those client alerts that law firms send out, those articles. This service gathers those up and you can subscribe to it. It's free, and you can search that database and you can find something that, you know, a large law firm wrote about an issue where you're just trying to get up to speed, right? You don't have time or the resources to do something, but if you could just find an article, 2 or 3 pages that gives you the basics, that will at least get you started. And then, of course, what I consider to be table stakes, or certainly what your goals should be in terms of automating your legal department, contract management systems, something that allows you certainly to store and to track and to manage the terms of a contract. But the really good systems, they allow you to assemble contracts in the system. You can negotiate with them. They integrate with Word or Google Docs, whatever system you're using. When you're done, they have the e-signature tools. You can send it all out. You never have to really print out a piece of paper. It'll get the signatures, it'll get all the approvals, it'll store them. So a contract management system is something I think should be really high on your list. E-billing systems, how you are paying bills for the legal department. For most of my career, it was paper. We finally got an e-billing system like the very end of my second general counselness, and certainly at my last job. It was great because there was so much data. First, it made it easy, right? You could review the bills, you could approve them, you could question things. It would match them up to the outside counsel guidelines. But for me, it was the data. I knew how much I was spending really easily. I could slice and dice it a different way. So an e-billing system is number 2 on the Trinity. And then what document management system do you use? Where do you store the things that you are writing? How do people access it? You don't need anything fancy. Office 365 with OneDrive or SharePoint is fine. You can use Dropbox or Box. You can use Google Docs. It doesn't matter as long as you've put some time into how is this organized? How are we going to find the things that we need to find? How are we going to label things? What is the structure for our filing system? What are our passwords? Who has access to what? All those different things matter. But the really important thing is you have to spend the time to learn how to use the tools that you have brought in. And a lot of lawyers, and I'm guilty of this myself sometimes, it's like, yeah, that's great. I'll learn to do the basics, and then I'll just not do anything else. And one of the places where I saw that I was hurting myself is really understanding all the powerful tools that are involved in Microsoft Word. There are a lot of really cool features other than just typing things up and saving them. If you spend the time, if you can find a tutorial on YouTube, which is usually where I go, or find an article, but you can't be afraid to play around and try new things. And you'll find, and I'm writing about this in the productivity book, a whole section on Office 365. There are so many neat things that can save you a ton of time and a ton of effort, but you can't be afraid. And then lastly, what I think is going to truly be the game changer from a technology standpoint for in-house lawyers is Chat GPT. And earlier this year, I wrote one of my 10 Things blogs on Chat GPT. You can find it if you go to 10things.net. You'll probably see it on the side in the most current articles. But I use Chat GPT almost every day. And I would never use it to write a legal brief or citations or anything like that. But if I am stuck, if I want to, what are the elements of tortious interference in Texas? I can just type that in, and instead of going into Lexis or Westlaw or whatever and finding the case, I will get almost invariably a very accurate summary of what the elements are. And I've done it long enough that I could also look at it and go, well, that's not quite right. But it gets me started, and it saves me an incredible amount of time to find something that just gets me going in the right place. The other day, I asked it just for fun, create a checklist for non-disclosure agreements. Bam, 10 seconds later, there you go. Perfectly good checklist. I could add to it or subtract from it, but it captured everything. So there are ways that you can use it today, especially just the free version, that can really save you a lot of time. You just can't be afraid to use it, but you have to understand the limitations. And I write about that in that 10 Things blog. It's also a section in the upcoming book, and you can find lots of people weighing in on ChatGPT for lawyers. So don't ignore technology. And in fact, the really successful lawyers make it a habit of embracing and really learning in detail what it is that they have available. Read a lot. This is a great habit. Why does this matter? When you read, you develop more knowledge, wider knowledge. You improve your writing because usually the stuff that you're reading has been edited. And you can see, I won't say that about the blog, but I'll say most good stuff that you read has been edited, and you can learn a lot about writing and structure just from reading a lot. Improves your critical thinking. Really allows you to involve empathy, especially if you are reading, a wide swath of things. I like to read here in the United States, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, very opposed on the political spectrum, but I get a lot of sense for why people think the way they think or what they're thinking. And that allows me to be more empathetic, which is a really important skill for in-house lawyers. I may see something that I think is a risk or an opportunity. I can discover new things, and it just makes you more interesting, right? If you've ever been to a board dinner and you're sitting next to a board member, you think, what am I going to talk about? My guess is if you are a reader, something that you read in the newspaper that week or saw online, if you start with that, you're probably on your way to a conversation. So reading is really, really important. And so are checklists. I am a huge fan of checklists. And if you read my blog last Thursday, or maybe you've seen it over the last few days, I talk about why standard operating procedures and checklists are so important and why this is such a good habit to have. Creating a checklist reduces errors. Yes, you have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of contracts. Sometimes, and I still do this myself, you get so busy, you get going so fast, you think you saw something in the contract, but when you go back through with your checklist, you realized it's not really there. You just kind of thought it was there because of maybe something that you saw. So trying to be in a hurry, trying to get more done, realizing you have a short deadline, you're trying to get to something else, a checklist can save you and save your work product, so it can reduce errors. It can get everyone on the same page from a consistency and standardization standpoint. One of the examples I use in the blog, a pretty classic one, is a manager asked her team, how do you prepare a checklist for how do you make toast? And when they all came back, they all started off differently. Someone said you got to shop for bread, first step. Someone said you have to pick the type of bread. Someone started with putting the bread in the toaster. So things that you think in your mind may be uniform among all the members of the team may not be. And a checklist brings that consistency and that standardization that makes the task uniform and the results uniform, which leads to enhanced productivity. If you have things written down and you know what you need to do step by step, and you're not trying to recreate the wheel, that makes you incredibly more productive and certainly not wasting time on things that you already know. It's just an easy way to remind you what you do know. Stress reduction, one of the really great things about a checklist is if it's a good checklist, if you do all these things, you've got whatever the work product is in the right form that you need it. That's a big relief off of stress. If I can do things faster, that's a relief from stress. And then if I can delegate work to someone and I can give them a checklist, this is what you need to do or look for, or whatever the case may be, I can feel 100 times more confident that the person I gave that task to is going to do it right. They may do it differently than I would, but they're going to get the things that need to be done because they're in the checklist. And this is one of the checklists I prepared a long time ago when I was asked to be kind of the risk spotter for the company. Things that we need to be aware of, not necessarily because they're legal issues. And this is what I came up with. And I just took a picture of this, a screenshot of this, and I had this taped in the inside cover of my notebook. I don't anymore because I have it memorized. But if I would be reading something or in a meeting, I'd have that open and I could just kind of tick things off, basically telling me, is this something that's going to require a little more thought and a little more effort. Fortunately, most of the time, no, it wasn't that big of a deal. But every once in a while, a checklist like this gave me a framework to analyze things and come up with, what do we need to do next? So huge fan of checklists. And I think successful lawyers aren't ashamed to say, yeah, I have a checklist. I rely on them all the time because I think they're incredibly valuable and incredible. Whatever you want to call them, that I think all successful in-house lawyers should have or can take advantage of. You may have some of your own, and that's great. I have no monopoly on this. I just found that over time, those ones came back consistently. Here are some posts from the blog if you're interested on a lot of the different things that we talked about. I did not add the checklist one. I'll put that in before I send this around, so you can click on that one. But all of these will help you develop one or more of the habits that I discussed in the previous slides. And with that, please check out the blog. If you have a question, we're going to get to those here in just a second. You can also email me at any time. I talk to in-house lawyers. I answer questions a lot. Doesn't bother me. Always happy to do that. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not connected. Just send me an invite. I love to connect with people. I find LinkedIn to be a really valuable tool. Very unlike most social media, it's actually useful, and the connections and the interactions that you have can actually be pretty powerful. So big fan of that. And with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to open up the mics. We'll take some questions. Maybe one in the chat. Okay, thank you, Sterling. Very helpful. Great, I appreciate that. Cynthia,
Yeah,
let's open up the floor.
fantastic. Thank you so much, Sterling. We've actually set this up as a Zoom meeting, so if people want to put their videos on and unmute, this would be a great time to do so. Please do share any questions or even insights that you have. I've noted down a couple, so I'm happy to kick off. But please, I'm sure people do have questions, or I hope you do have. I certainly got a lot out of it. Okay, so my first question was just around meetings. So I know you were talking about, making a decision as to which meetings to invest your time in, and this is something I try to do myself. Do you have any tips or sort of tricks on how to work out, and this might sound like a silly question, but I know why I'm asking it, how to work out what meetings you really should attend? Because there are some where it's really obvious that you're probably not going to be adding very much, but then there are some where you sort of think, maybe just optically it's good that I'm there. So do you, how do you make a call? Is it really about being in the room? Is it really about having something to sort of contribute? What's your thought process when you're working out which meeting you should be attending?
Great question. And one of the blogs in the last page, Escaping Meeting Hell, goes through a lot of this in detail, because it's something that I spent a lot of time thinking about as well. And it's kind of like everything, unfortunately, it's kind of a combination of, do I need to be in the room, and how much value am I actually going to ask versus everything else that I have to do on my plate. So my first rule was, I will attend any meeting where someone who can fire me is in the room. So, that's, if CEO calls a meeting, I'm there. I don't care what the topic is. I don't care about anything else. If you drop down a level, so it's peers or someone, from the business, then the very first thing I would look at is how many people are invited to this meeting. And if there's more than a handful, let's say there's 20 people, there is nothing less productive in my mind than a big group meeting, especially if it doesn't have an agenda. So I would ask the person, what's the agenda? If they don't have an agenda, I'm very suspicious about how good of a use of my time is this going to be. And secondly, what is it that I can do to help you at this meeting? So I would reach out to the organizer and have them tell me, why do you need me there? And if they had a good reason, I would go. If they had a good reason, maybe I wasn't the right person and I was the boss, I would send someone else on my team. But if they didn't have an agenda and they didn't have a good reason, they just wanted me there because, well, we thought someone from legal should be there. Um, Now I felt free to say, look, invite me to the next meeting, or send me the summary of the meeting. And now you can record meetings, right, on Zoom and Teams. There's AI functionality that will summarize those meetings for you, give you the minutes. So there are lots of ways that you can get what was discussed. The hard feels like there could be something risky, good or bad, and probably would be a good use of someone from the legal department, at least at this point, to hear what these guys are talking about. Because if they start going down a path that you know is illegal or is a disaster, at least you're there and you say, hey, time out. Let's back up the truck. There's a few things we need to talk about here. And you can save everybody a lot of time by being there. Generally think about it. There's more of that in the blog.
Interesting. No, that's great.
Strategic stakeholder management. Yes.
I've seen
That's a great way to call it.
did you want to share some thoughts on that?
Hi, Cynthia. Hi, Sterling. Really
Hi.
good
Hi.
Conversation. Apologies, I can't turn on my video. Not in the right
No problem.
space. Yeah, so thank you for sharing very practical tips.
No problem.
Yeah, I made that comment because really, it's like everybody wants to know what to do and legal has to answer. So you're in the center of the business. Everybody calls you for things to do. But when it's time to give the commendations, you're easily forgotten. So I found it very interesting when you said in choosing what meetings to attend, you'll be very strategic about it. So thanks for sharing. I think stakeholder management is something that like you mentioned, the soft skills, it's really important that one has to learn it. It's not something you learn in school.
Nope.
So emotional intelligence, using the right words, learning how to communicate, and all that. I think for us in our market, in our area, I know that corruption is generally applicable everywhere, but I think we seem to have a special issue around corruption. So my question is, how do you manage issues around corruption, especially when you work for a company, okay, that has very high ethics, right? And everybody goes with the talk, but you find that a few people may seem to have high ethics, but then in small conversations and small circles, it's clear that they have some agenda with corruption. And as general counsel, you would refuse to approve certain things, no matter how well it's presented. But I think sometimes the challenge is in speaking up, you're not sure who the collaborators are. Okay. You find that someone who you think, oh, high ethics and all, but then you find out that, oh, there's an issue there. And then the next person to talk to, you're not even sure if the person is collaborating with this other person. So it's more like, I don't know, is it a discernment thing? How do you figure out how to deal with corruption, especially when it's in small circles?
Yeah. Wow. That's a hard problem. Didn't face it too much over my career. I can think of a couple of instances where we had some suspicions. I would say the things that we did, at least in the legal department, is first we figured out who are our real allies in making sure that the company stayed on the right path, on an ethical path, and certainly nothing that would get us crosswise with, here in the US, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, in England, the Anti-Bribery Act. I'm sure there are other acts very similar to that. But finding out who you can actually trust and have a conversation with. So it was usually the CFO, head of audit, and then if you have a board of directors, usually there's an audit committee, and having a few of those people. So if you have suspicions, if you think of things, you're seeing things, you can have conversations with others so you can try to solve that problem as a group. And the one thing that I learned is you never, if you suspect something and it may be 100% real, don't go into the initial discussions looking to, screaming, there's corruption, there's crime. You have to be a little more subtle, and you have to go, there's something here. It seems a little off. Can I walk you through this and get your opinion? And you start to get other people to see what you're seeing. And then you can decide, what do we need to do about this? Who do we report this to? How can we stop this? Or what do we need to do? The tricky part is, if you confide in someone who's part of the corruption, that's a problem. You're probably going to get fired, or at least marginalized on the side. So it's tricky. I do not envy anyone who has to face a task like that, because it's really hard. But I think it starts with finding the allies in the company, and then not coming out, just a lot more subtle, and start to tease it out, and then kind of figure out as a group what to do. That's as good of advice as I have. So hope that's mildly helpful.
Very helpful, and it kind of resonates with my thoughts, because when I get into those conversations, with other general counsel, I think, thanks for sharing, really. And I think the key thing is to be subtle about it, and not just treat it like one big crisis that needs some alarm bells ringing. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Anyone else? I can stay a few minutes past. I know we're at the top of the hour, but whatever you guys need.
I've got one more that I was going to ask, but if anyone else has got questions, please let us know. So I'm glad that you mentioned ChatGPT when you were talking about sort of risk taking. I'm a big ChatGPT fan, and I've actually just started subscribing. So,
right.
I'm interested. I will read your blog because I'm interested to see how you use it. I tend to use it for revising and reframing emails or internal comms, just to get the messaging right. So I'm really fascinated to hear and understand how other lawyers are using it. What I wanted to ask though, Sterling, was in the context of risk taking, you talked about taking on new responsibilities. So what kind of responsibilities, have you explored as a means of exercising that risk muscle, if you like? And what would you recommend for people if they're thinking, okay, well, what can I do?
Yeah, no, great question. So the very first time I remember was working for a general counsel who hated to do the annual budget for the legal department. Literally hated it, saved it to the last minute. It would always be a rush. And one year I said, can I take on the budget process? Obviously, you approve everything, but I'll be the person who goes and gathers up all the information. I'll put it all together. A, I was really interested in the process. B, I knew if I wanted to be general counsel, I was going to have to learn it. And C, I was tired of getting emails at 4 o'clock on the day the budget was due, asking for all this analysis that should have been asked for 2 or 3 months ago. But volunteering and taking that on, I got to learn how to do a budget. I got to work with a lot of different people in the company from finance, got to present the budget to the executive team. A lot of skills I learned just because I raised my hand and said, can I help you with that? So those administrative tasks, like I ran the legal department's website. I know nothing about websites. I just knew it was important. And I wanted to be the person who was in charge of it. And so finding, I think, those administrative tasks within the department, again, depending on the size, that you can own and you can run with is one way. On the legal side, again, I told my team, we're going to be garbage men, and we're going to look for opportunities where something comes in and no one wants to deal with it. The very first one I can remember is data privacy. No one wanted to claim it. They couldn't figure out, well, who should be it. I said, we'll take it. We'll take data privacy. We had to learn it, obviously, but we were responsible for it. And you can see now, if you had started getting involved in data privacy 15 years ago, and you were still that person now, that is an incredibly valuable skill. Here in the US, they are dying to find people with data privacy skills who can work in legal departments, because it's just hard to find those people. So you never know when a skill is going to turn out to be something, either, hey, I could capitalize on this, or it's just going to make me a better, more valuable person on the legal department. So you're just keeping your eyes open and looking for things that say, no one wants that, I'll do it. That sounds interesting. That was true for contests. I learned bankruptcy law. No one wanted to do bankruptcy stuff. And it made me a better lawyer, and certainly made me a better general counsel when the time came.
Yeah. Oh, great stuff. Yeah, great tips there. Fantastic. It looks like we don't have any questions.
Okay. All right.
So thank you so much, Sterling. I know you're going
my pleasure.
You're going to be sharing the slides and the content with us so that we can share it with the community. But yes, huge thanks for, again, just sharing your thoughts. Thank you for everything you do. I found I was taking notes, and I'm sure many others were as well. So really appreciate your investment of time today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in 2024, and have a great holiday season as well.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to end it there. Speak to you soon.
Cheers.